In this episode, we're going to explore the cast of characters involved in the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Glynn County Police Chief John Powell and 3 officers have been indicted.
A 20-count indictment alleges investigator James Quesada had an inappropriate personal relationship with a confidential informant. Indictments allege officers David Haney and David Hassler were told several times about Quesada's affair, including by his wife. Both failed to notify a superior officer or their chief.
And when he did find out, he didn't have the detective supervisor cooperate with GBI investigators. Another officer having dealings in a bar with a convicted drug dealer who was carrying a weapon. Chief Powell was aware of that as well, but did not order an internal investigation.
More than once in the investigation, Police Chief John Powell tried to influence a witness. Powell and Vidalia Police Chief Brian Scott made an indirect threat of damage to an investigator's employment with the Glynn County Police Department. Investigators say it was to deter him from testifying freely and truthfully. According to the Brunswick News, the officer who this investigation first centered around has already pleaded guilty to violating his oath of office twice and has now agreed to testify in these other cases as well.
I'm getting to my point, I promise. But first, let's do some more fun facts. This guy, y'all remember him, the officer accused of smashing an informant? It's also been alleged that he provided that informant with cocaine and meth. At some point, he began using cocaine and meth himself, so much so to the point where he had to enter into rehab while he was on the department's payroll. Moving on, at the time of the indictment, the chief of police was suspended with pay. We are unsure whether or not he is still suspended with pay at this time. It's important to note that the grand jury found, and I quote, a culture of cover-up, failure to supervise, abuse of power, and lack of accountability within the administration. Ooh, burn! All of this information is important to know because of how the Glynn County Police Department handled the investigation. First, this is what they told Ahmaud's mother.
When I was first notified on the 23rd of February, I was told that Ahmaud was involved in a burglary. There was a confrontation with my son and the homeowner, and at that confrontation, there was a struggle over the firearm. Ahmaud was shot and killed. We already know that was bullshit. Next, the police listed Gregory McMichael and William Roddy Bryant as witnesses and not suspects in the police report. Last fun fact, the Glynn County Police Department is hiring. Starting salary is approximately $45,000. Actually, one more fun fact. I got that neon sign from Glynn County Police Department's Facebook page, and the comments section is in shambles. Let's talk about Jackie Johnson. She is the first woman to serve as district attorney in that section of the state. According to Ms. Johnson, she's been a prosecutor for about 20 years, and she was the first prosecutor assigned to the Ahmaud Arbery case. There's been an allegation that either Ms. Johnson or someone in her office ordered officers not to make an arrest. Let's take a look.
I don't see how they expect the police to go cuff these men up when they've been told directly on Sunday and on Monday by the district attorney's offices not to arrest anybody.
In response, Ms. Johnson first issued a written statement and then later went on a local radio station. Let's listen in.
But I want to start with the accusations by the 2 Glynn County commissioners, because they came out saying that the police stated they wanted to make an arrest right away, but you advised them not to.
That's so far from the truth. It's just a straight up lie.
And then she said this.
Only law enforcement officers have arrest powers in the state of Georgia. District attorneys cannot arrest, and it's not our job to arrest.
Here's the problem with what she just said. So generally, a district attorney does not have the power to arrest anyone. However, they can order the police to arrest someone, and they do it all the time. You would be hard pressed to find a police officer who would not make an arrest after being directed to do so. Let's move on.
Why do you think those two men would make this statement?
Retaliation for me being the whistleblower on their police department multiple times.
Messy. This is messy. Moving on. This is what Ms. Johnson had to say about the second prosecutor, Mr. Barnhill.
Apparently his son's in the DA's office.
He does.
So why didn't we know that, and why did we go to Barnhill? So why go him knowing there's a conflict already?
At the time, I was concerned about the conflict my office had, and I really didn't feel like it was a good idea, for knowing what the gravity of the situation was, for us to just tell the police, sorry, we can't help you.
This is problematic. Johnson recused herself because she had a conflict. Her office had a relationship with the killer's father, but then she knowingly sent the case to an office that also had a conflict. She says there's no collusion or foul play, but it gives the impression that she did not take the case seriously, that she sent the case to Barnhill for it to die. She wasn't representing the people of Georgia. She was representing the police. Or at least that's what it looks like. Moving on, this is what Ms. Johnson had to say about the video.
I saw it at the same time everybody else did.
Also important to know,
what I got from my assistant district attorneys is this is a burglary, and this looks like self-defense.
Now, Ms. Johnson's interview lasted for 36 minutes. And not one time in that 36 minutes did she mention Ahmaud Arbery or express her condolences to Ahmaud Arbery's family. She did, however, have this to say.
How difficult has this been for your family?
It was a tough Mother's Day because it's hard on my mom.
Now, Jackie Johnson is up for re-election in November of 2020. She has ran opposed in the last 3 elections. Let's talk about George Barnhill, the DA with an opinion. As we all know, he penned a very suspect letter to the Glynn County Police Department. Here's what Lee Merritt, the attorney for Ahmaud's family, had to say about it.
He put together an opinion about whether or not this was legal, knowing that by putting that opinion out there that he would taint the prosecutorial pool, that he would taint any potential jury pool, and that his words would matter. And his words don't line up with the law in any important respect.
Facts. Attorney Merritt is talking about a few things here. First, whether or not the laws surrounding self-defense and citizens' arrests will apply in this case will be up to the judge and then maybe the jury, but it's not looking good for the McMicheals. Also relevant is that in his letter, Barnhill claims that there was not probable cause to arrest the McMicheals, but then the GBI pulled through and within 36 hours definitively found that there was probable cause to arrest the McMicheals.
We applied the law to the facts in this case and came up pretty quickly with a solid belief that there's sufficient probable cause to charge the McMicheals with felony murder and aggravated assault.
Oh, fun fact. You remember how we said that Barnhill's son worked at some point in the Glynn County DA's office? Well, turns out that Barnhill's son and Gregory McMichael, the father of the killer, worked together on a previous prosecution of Arbery. I slowed it down because this story is about to get sexy. Enter Olivia Pearson.
Olivia Pearson has served 19 years on Douglas City Council, unopposed.
In 2017, Opinion Man, also known as District Attorney Barnhill, charged Ms. Pearson with voter fraud for helping a young black voter use a voting machine for the first time in 2012.
Do you know why Miss Pearson signed the back of the vote certificate that she was assisting you?
Because I didn't know what to do, what I ought to do.
Was that the first time using the machine?
Yeah, that was my first time.
Okay, did she give you suggestions of who to vote for? At the end there where you have to push the button to cast your ballot, who pushed that?
Me.
And that's what happened.
Were you on the ballot?
No.
Coley Pearson's trial ended with a hung jury. Afterwards, one of the jurors told the Southern Center for Human Rights the only reason Pearson received the not guilty verdict because one of those people got on the jury, later clarifying those people meant black.
That hero was a 29-year-old black female juror. She was the only juror to stand between Pearson and a conviction.
Because the jury deadlocked, the DA's office pursued the charges again. It took the new jury just 20 minutes to find her not guilty.
So the story there is that the Georgia State Department is the office in charge of statewide elections. At that time, the head of the State Department was this guy, Brain Kemp. At the time of Miss Pearson's case, Kemp was running for governor of Georgia. This means that he oversaw his own election. In July of 2017, Kemp removed 560,000 names from the voter registration list because he said that they had not registered or they had missed previous elections. Turns out that 70,000 names on that list had actually registered to vote, and more importantly, a majority, about 65% of those removed from the list, if they had re-registered in the same county, they would have been eligible to vote. Kemp also closed down a number of polling locations, and surprise, they were in largely black counties. Anyway, Kemp ended up winning the election against Stacey Abrams by about 55,000 votes. Ballsy motherfucker. Kemp is now under congressional investigation for his actions. This is important because Kemp claims this was part of a larger campaign of voter suppression. I mean, voter fraud. Voter fraud. Kemp said he was trying to combat voter fraud. The accusation is that Kemp put the Pearson case down so that Barnhill could pick it up in a place where there would be a lot less scrutiny. Here's what Barnhill's office had to say about the prosecution of Miss Pearson.
The accusation that Mrs. Pearson was somehow targeted or that the prosecution was racially motivated runs completely contrary to the facts. The letter highlighted the race of the other individuals indicted at the same time as Pearson for the same crime. 2 black, 2 white. Pearson was the only one to fight the charges.
Moving on. Here's what Jackie Johnson, the first prosecutor on the case, had to say about Barnhill.
I've known George Barnhill for many years as a prosecutor over in the Waycross Circuit, and I've relied on him over the years. I consider him a man of integrity.
Here's what Lee Merritt, the attorney for the Arbery family, had to say about Mr. Barnhill.
I think that Mr. Barnhill, which is the district attorney who penned that letter, ought to be brought up before ethics charges before the Georgia State Bar.
Opinion Man, aka Mr. Barnhill, is up for re-election in 2020. Now, just in case, here is the contact information for the Georgia Bar. Let's talk about Tom Durden. Mr. Durden was elected in 1998. He received the Arbery case on April 13th of 2020. On May 5th of 2020, the day the video of the shooting was leaked, Mr. Durden finally released a statement saying that the case would be referred to a grand jury as soon as the courts reopened following the COVID-19 lockdown. Mr. Durden did not order any arrests on the Arbery case. Here's a video recording of Mr. Durden.
Secure and against the defendants at this point. That was, of course, arrived at. But yes, to answer your question, yes, I will be the one prosecuting the case.
He sounds like that because he recently underwent mouth surgery. Now, this is not relevant, but we're going to tell you anyway. On Wednesday, September 5th, 2007, Mr. Durden was arrested and charged with driving under the influence of alcohol. At around 3:20 p.m. in the afternoon, Mr. Durden drove his vehicle into a ditch and called the sheriff's department to report it. Durden admitted to having a problem and acknowledged that he was seeking treatment at an undisclosed facility. At the time, Mr. Durden was the district attorney of Liberty County in Georgia. On May 11, 2020, Durden was taken off the case, and this woman, Joyette Holmes, was assigned to the Arbery case. Madam Holmes was a magistrate judge for 4 years before becoming the first Black district attorney of Cobb County. Let's talk about Allan Tucker. You know the video that we've all seen?
It was leaked by attorney Allan Tucker, a friend of the McMicheals.
You really thought releasing this video was going to help?
I really thought the release of the video would put the truth out to the public. I was trying to stop a riot.
When asked about his friends, the McMicheals, Tucker told the New York Times, and I quote, "It wasn't two men with a Confederate flag in the back of a truck going down the road and shooting a jogger in the back." End quote.
What happened. I don't have an excuse for it. I can't explain it.
And then he said this.
Other than, we always say, well, if he'd just frozen and hadn't done anything, he wouldn't have got shot.
What? He later released a written statement and attempted to clarify that remark. In that statement, Mr. Tucker wrote, in part, "I am not a racist. All of my friends who are of color will gladly corroborate my integrity." If Tucker released that video after consulting with the McMicheals, the question becomes, did he violate attorney-client confidentiality? Ultimately, that'll be a question for the Georgia bar to answer. Good luck to Mr. Tucker, the man with all the black friends. Let's talk about William Roddy Bryant. Here's what his attorney had to say about him.
Roddy is a family man, NASCAR fan, and enjoys rock and roll. He is not now, and never has been, a vigilante.
There's been some speculation that Mr. Bryant had a gun and that he cocked that gun while he was shooting the video. Here's what his attorney had to say about that.
Mr. Bryant was unarmed at the time of the shooting.
According to his now hidden Facebook page, Bryant is a Trump supporter and up until this incident worked as a mechanic at a local store. According to online records, Bryant is a neighbor of Michael's and lived within a mile of where the incident occurred.
Roddy and his family are now receiving threats. Roddy has lost his job and is now unemployed.
Mr. Bryant has not been charged, but many suspect that he will be. Next up, Travis McMicheal. There's not much information about Travis, but here's what we do know. He is a 34-year-old man who murdered Ahmaud Arbery in cold blood. Travis has at least one child that he was playing with when he was arrested, and he inherited his father's hairline. Also important to know, on January 1st, 2020, Travis told police that a firearm had been stolen from his truck. 53 days later, when Travis murdered Ahmaud, that incident of theft was the most recent one reported in the area. Travis McMicheal has been charged with murder and aggravated assault, and he is currently being held in prison without bail. And last, but certainly not least, Gregory McMichael. Gregory is 64. He worked at the Glynn County Police Department as a police officer from 1982 to 1989. Now, according to Dwayne Pollock, who works at the Human Resources Department for Glynn County, Greg has no record of discipline or complaints associated with his career. After that, McMicheal became an investigator for the Glynn County District Attorney's Office, and he worked with Barnhill's son on a previous prosecution of Arbery. When Gregory called 911, he told police that he recognized Ahmaud from a string of robberies committed in the neighborhood. But we know now that the most recent robbery in that neighborhood had occurred 53 days prior, and it was from Travis's truck. Gregory McMichael is currently being held in jail without bail for the murder and aggravated assault of Ahmaud Arbery. Ahmaud Arbery's mother had this to say.
Honestly, I really do think that the parties involved should be given the death penalty. You know, my son he was shot and killed. I saw my son come in the world, and seeing him leave the world is not something that I want to see ever.